So I've been doing Android for about 5 years now, and in every single job I've had, I had to talk directly with designers, try to figure out what they want from me. And I'm sure a lot of us have noticed that designers tend to come from an iOS background. iPhones, MacBooks, even though we use MacBooks too. And it's definitely possible to get a screen that looks great on every phone size. A recent layout that I did on 3 different phone sizes, 4.8 to 5.5. And they have all different aspect ratios and different DPIs, different DP sizes. And as of the beginning of this month, I took a quick look on Google dashboards, and you can see that there's every single kind of DPI, from low DPI, XX DPI, and also all different kinds of screen sizes. You might get a large phablet. Sorry? Oh, do you want the full presentation screen? Well, anyway, the numbers are not very important here. Anyway, you can have a large phablet with very low resolution, in which case your DP is just gonna explode large. Or you can have a small phone. We actually have a 3.5-inch screen in our company with a very high resolution, which will make your DPs go way small. Quick review of jargon. PX is pixels. Most designers do work in pixels, and they might be confused when presented with DP. DP, density independent pixel. This is going to be roughly 1 in 160 of an inch. You can see MDPI and XHDPI. On these 2 different screens, as long as you use the same DP, you'll get the same physical size of your image. Now, granted, DPI doesn't tell you how much DP you have on screen. So if you have this left minion on a low resolution tablet, that's going to be much bigger than our minion on a small, say maybe you're working with Android Wear watches. Even though these 2 are both going to be 1/4 of an inch large, on the watch it's going to be much bigger real estate than your phablet. And to demonstrate that, I ran my design on 4 different phones. All of the avatar icons are 35 DP. Roughly this, in reality, that's roughly the size of my pinky nail. And it looks in that sense, if we want our avatars to be 1 physical size, that works pretty good. Notice that 35 DP is maybe 15% of the screen here, but a much smaller proportion. So if your designer had intended this avatar to be 1/8 of the screen, once you run that on tablet, it's going to be a lot smaller than 1/8 of the screen. So here's another good comparison. Around the edges are 10% increments of your screen, and you can see how big these icons are. If you go with DP, on this screen you get 1/4 of the screen size, but by the time you reach a Nexus 9 tablet, it has dropped by half of the real estate. Actually, it's half on the width and half on the height. So you're actually getting 1/4 of the real estate as you would on this phone compared to this tablet here. One good way around that is to get a percentage of your screen. If you have an element that your designer tells you should be 30% of your screen, on every screen it's going to be 30%. But given that we have all different aspect ratios, on here that looks pretty rectangular. On here you're getting almost a square. And if your you're a designer intends for you to put images in there, you might get some distortion depending on how you lay out. So how do we work around that? When I design these slides, they're more for a designer audience, but we can still tell what they want from us. A designer needs to, when they work on their designs, they need to work in pixels, in Photoshop or whatever. And if they ask you which phone they should design for, pick a middle of the road screen. Nexus 5 is what I usually recommend. It's a nice middle of the road screen, not too big, not too small. And then they will also ask you how many pixels is a DP. On this specific phone, it's going to be around 3 pixels per DP. That gives you a good starting point. Communication is definitely the key. Learn to talk with your designers and learn the spirit of their design. So on a recent design, I was given how many pixels is width here and how many pixels in height. Obviously, when we use different phones, that's gonna look a lot smaller or a lot bigger. So eventually, I worked with our designer to figure out what percentage of the screen they want. I believe it was 67% for this text box, and in that scaling, it worked well on a lot of different phones. 3 tools I usually use: relative sizes. For example, your avatar versus your font size height. If the designer wanted the font to be, say, 1/3 of the height of the avatar, we can work with that. We'll use our DP magic to keep those sizes in sync. Percentages, very useful. I find I'm just gonna move on to the next slide here. Percentages are great for when you want to keep the relative importance of real estate. For example, in this screen here, we want unused tabs to take up half the space, and the currently used tabs to keep 1/3 of the space. Then, no matter what screen size you use, even tablets, this ratio will always be kept the same. The hazard of using DP is if let's say this is 160 DP, right? You have a 320 DP screen phone. If you use 160, once you get an even wider phone, that's not going to fill up the whole space. You'll have white space. Things will start looking ugly. And when should we use DP? DP is something that we should use to keep the same physical size. So for example, these buttons here, add tag, we might always want that to be the size of our thumb on whatever phone size. If we use DP for that will keep this the same. Aspect ratio is great for things like hero images, banners, and there's a lot of third-party things you can find on GitHub to help you work with aspect ratios. Okay, and font sizes. So, coming from their iOS world, designers will tell you to make a font how many points high. That can be useful. We use scaled pixels, which takes into account the user's font size setting. And so when should we use SP? When should we use DP? On Google Documents, we're recommended always use SP. Of course, there's exceptions. Let's say this badge here. If we use DP, it will always stay within bounds of my image here. But if we use SP, and the user has a large font, that could easily blow my 3 outside the bounds of my badge. So that's a situation where you might want to use DP instead of SP, even though it goes against rules. Everything down here, it's up to your judgment. Font, paragraph, you should probably use SP. Labels, you have to use your own judgment. And in mocks, tell your designers that PX are totally fine because we can, let's say my avatar icon here is they tell me to make it 116 pixels. And they tell me to make my font height 44 pixels. From that, I can tell the relative sizes and I can figure out what looks good. Bottom line, communication. Your designer knows what they want in their heads, and we talk to them, find out whether they want your Android picture to be that much on the screen, 3/4 of screen height, or 50 density independent pixels, so it stays the same on any screen size. Sit with your designers. How many of you have ever sat down beside the designer and have them tell you what looks good on your phone, and then you run it, change your few lines in your code and run it again and let them see? How many have you done that? So most of you have done that. Excellent. It's the most effective way. And run it on multiple phones. Try a couple of tablets for good measure. Don't expect pixel perfection for more than one single model, but definitely strive to make it look good on every model that you see. And that's it. Any questions?